We are back with more My Southern Home, and I'm here with Jennifer Jewell Smith with Keller Williams and Jeff Ratanapool with Stockton Mortgage. And I love that you took us to this beautiful home, Jennifer, that you have as an Airbnb.
Correct, yes. It's an Airbnb that we have in Shelby County. It's available most weekends. We're rented out pretty well about through November, but it's a fantastic property and we love it.
And Jeff, you're seeing a lot of homeowners gravitate to purchasing Airbnbs for their second home that's income property for them.
Sure. I mean, with the pandemic, there was a big rush for people to buy second homes, investment properties in locations, I think, where they thought, hey, should this ever happen again, I've got a place where I can go and shelter in and be in a remote resort area. And so, you know, depending on how they're going to use the property, we in the mortgage business would classify it as either an investment property or a second home. But yeah, those are available for financing in both cases.
So when it comes to the financing of a second home, how is that different from if you're purchasing a home to live in?
That's a great question. So here's the first thing. It has to be a habitable, like, residence up to 4 units. So it's still got to meet, you know, you couldn't buy a 5-plex or something like that that's commercial, but as long as it's a single family duplex up to 4 and it is on, you know, a tract of land where we can put our mortgage on, then it's going to be eligible. And so what determines whether it's a second home or investment property is really the intention of the borrower to what they're going to do with it after they get into the home. So if they're going to strictly rent it out and keep it as rent and never live in it, then that's going to be a true investment property. If they're going to live in it half the year and maybe do like an Airbnb scenario, then as long as it's in a resort area and far enough away from their primary residence, then we can consider that a second home. The interesting thing about it is you can only have one second home, because there are multiple investors that like to buy multiple properties at one time. And so they're like, well, this one's a second home and that's a second home, but really you can't have a second home, if that makes any sense, right?
Well, Jennifer, and that's kind of where you come in, because one of the things that I like about you being a realtor and having this Airbnb, if someone in the Louisville area wants to purchase an investment property, you would be a fantastic realtor to use, because you know this information that the borrower is going to need to know.
Yes, we have a couple different properties. This is could be a second home for us, and that's kind of what we bought it for, with an intention of having a backup plan if we ever wanted to move out to here to a more farm-like setting. So we have a couple traditional rentals, what most people kind of think of traditionally. This is a really nice Airbnb that we could see ourselves living at some point in time. So we have clients that do both, and it's a different process for an Airbnb. There's a lot of different things to factor in on an Airbnb, financing being one of them, and then just other fixed variable expenses that some people don't think about, and management, and there's a lot more that goes into an Airbnb than just a traditional rental.
So if a viewer is thinking about going down this path and purchasing either a second home or numerous investment properties, what are some of the things that they need to think about before they call you?
Well, they probably need to call Jeff first to see kind of what we're looking at, and that really is the first step, because I don't know how to approach it. I don't know how to approach it from the commercial or residential side until I know what their intentions are. Because this was a purchase as a second home, basically, to where the other ones are more commercial property. So if I kind of know their intention and what their ability is and what they're putting down, I can kind of work off expenses as well too, because there's different expenses for different types of properties. Like where we have the property management of this one, the expense is a little higher than a property management of a traditional rental. So kind of knowing, you know, what their finances are, what their goals are, we can kind of work backwards on what property might be the best fit.
And Jeff, I always say on the show, who you use is important, and in this case it's extremely important, because you need 2 knowledgeable teammates to get you where you want to go.
You know, one of the great things about working with Jennifer, we know the ins and outs of what we need to do, and that allows us to get to the solution or the plan quickly. And so the fact that we have that working knowledge of each other and what's needed, we don't really confuse the borrower. So Jennifer's going to know, hey, if they're going to buy this as a second home, that's how I'm going to qualify them. And so I'm going to need to ask the questions on the application about, you know, do you plan to live here 6 months out of the year? Have you owned any other properties before? And then there's going to be more of a down payment required, and there's going to be a change in the interest rate. You know, and so as long as we have their expectations set from the beginning, then we have a successful deal. Whenever she and I are not in lockstep, that's when the borrower gets confused. They feel like that we're not on the same page, and it ends up turning a great deal into possibly a bad deal.
And Jennifer, once Jeff goes through all of those hoops with the investor, you come in and you help them get the right home. So what does that look like?
Usually we sit down, we talk about goals, like what are we looking for? There's just a drastic difference between a second home and a rental home, and like where do you want to be? Is this somewhere you plan to move later? Are you gonna bank on appreciation? Is it more cash on cash? Like what do you want your return to look like? And some people are more wanting to make max cash, like they want to make most cash per month. To where other people want to have the second property where they can enjoy it. You might not make as much money, but it's a property that you can move to later. You can offset expenses. So it really depends on what the borrower is looking to do.
All right, well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
We'll be back with more My Southern Home in just a moment.